Hello again from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. I noticed earlier today on a website, news website, I can't remember which one it was, that there had been a shooting incident in Canada, and then I found out that it was in Fredericton, New Brunswick, so in eastern or Atlantic Canada, and that a total of 4 people were killed, apparently by the 48-year-old man who was wounded in the incident and taken to a local hospital and who is in custody by local police officers. Whatever his motives were or are, we don't know yet. 2 of the killed people in the incident were local police officers who actually tragically were killed when they approached the 2 first shooting victims, one of whom has been identified by now as a local musician. The important thing now is whether you are politicians or others, police officers, gun rights activists, gun control activists, or neither, Christian or religious leaders or other ones, do not politicize this incident. This could theoretically, especially now in the early 21st century, with everything that is going on, with the still ongoing war on terrorism, with the apparently increasing culture of death and disregard for human life, call it gun violence, call it the slow committing of suicide through alcohol abuse, through smoking, through drug abuse, call it abortion, call it euthanasia, call it ethnic cleansing, whatever. And an increasing culture, I'm afraid, of godlessness. So regardless of which political party or coalition or movement is in power, regardless of which political system is officially in power, these kinds of incidents can happen. This is not to claim, this is not to say that we should do nothing about the availability of guns. Yes, we should. There should be reasonable gun control. No human being who has a history of violent and/or threatening or otherwise disturbing behavior, no human being who has a history of a serious mental illness, including mood swings, where even violent things can happen, violent actions can be taken when people are out of their minds, should be allowed legally to own a firearm of any kind. Those people who should be given that privilege should be adults, of course, and should have a clean record when it comes to crime, especially violent crime and threatening other people, disturbing other people, and should have no record of clinically diagnosed or otherwise clearly medically diagnosed mental illness. But that, of course, is not all. What we would need above all is something that falls largely out of the purview of politics, is a return to God or turning to God. Despite the fact that countries like Canada are officially majority Christian countries, in fact, a relatively small minority of the people can be identified and even identify themselves as born-again Christians. In other words, people who have consciously, at least once during their lifetimes, repented of their sins and asked Jesus Christ to cleanse them with his precious blood, and who continue to follow him. So ultimately the solution is not, for example, changing the current federal government. No, I'm not saying that the Canadian voters do not have a right to reject Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party in the next Canadian federal parliamentary elections, which are due to be held in October 2019. They have a perfect right to do so, but they should not expect miracles from the next federal government, even if Andrew Scheer became the new prime minister and the Conservatives formed the new federal cabinet. Because the underlying reasons are ones that can only to some extent be contained by legislation, no matter how well intentioned and no matter how important it is. At least that we could and should minimize these incidents. But then ultimately, to get at the root causes, we have to seriously and honestly consider the human nature. Is there something in the human nature that makes at least some people likely to kill others with firearms? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Yes, there is. This is not to say that most people under normal circumstances would even consider doing this. No. Maybe that 48-year-old man who probably killed these 4 people, including 2 police officers, was or is an emotionally unbalanced and troubled individual. Maybe he has had a record of frequent changing of work, whether because of incompetence or because of disagreements with fellow employees or employers, or because he has just been too restless to commit himself to any particular occupation for more than maybe a few years. Maybe. Or then there may have been personal tragedies, failures in marriage or marriages, or then so-called common law marriages or cohabitations, failures in parenting, possible parenting, strained or even broken relationships with his parents and or siblings, with his relatives, his friends. Maybe a general sense of personal powerlessness, anger and frustration, and the feeling that he has been wronged by others, and therefore supposedly he has the right to kill some people, even if those people had never done anything wrong to him, even if he had never met those people before. We don't know. And then there could be even dabbling in the occult. Once again, we don't know. These are just my ideas. There could be an excessive fascination with the violence that we can so easily now watch in the privacy of our own homes, especially online. But the important thing is not to politicize this, not to blame, in this case, the municipal or city government for this incident, because they likely cannot be blamed for it. Not to blame the local police force, but to look at the deeper moral and especially spiritual issues. Take care and God bless all of you.